Hello again, welcome to another edition of Arts and Ideas. I'm Sue Swinand. Today my guest is Mark Doyle, who is the owner and director of Autumn Color Digital Imaging, which is a world-class photographic processing center right here in central Massachusetts. We're very fortunate to have this lab, which is really a multifaceted company that works with commercial artists, fine artists, designers, digital artists, and they produce books and posters and the finest, highest quality digital archival printing. So I'm delighted to be here, and thanks for inviting us up to see this. It's really an amazing studio at 70 Webster Street in Worcester. Thanks for having us, Mark.
Thanks for coming.
And you've been a photographer all your life, I know, and what I'm so curious about is how you ever got to get started in the digital processing business and how you learned all this complicated technology, having been, how did that come about?
Well, like you said, I've been a photographer all my life. I started at a young age. I had a cousin that lived nearby that had a darkroom in the cellar, so he got me addicted to this in junior high school. And I worked as a commercial shooter. I went to New England School of Photography, then became a commercial shooter for a company called Leachmere. They're out of business. We did those Sunday circulars. And from that, I became an architectural photo assistant. So I worked for a guy by the name of Nick Wheeler. He was the top photo architectural guy in the world at the time. And we traveled all over the country photographing.
So you learned almost like an apprentice.
Yeah, and the neat thing about Nick is he had, we did all our own film processing. So when we came back from a job, I processed the slides, which was called E6 processing. I processed the color negatives, which was called C41, and then I processed the black and white negatives. And I then took those and I would make sets of duplicate slides, process those. I also made all the prints. There was another technician making prints with me, but we would then produce a color photographic print from those. Mm-hmm. I did that for 12 years with Nick. We traveled all over the country, never left the country. My hope was we're going to leave the country, travel around the world. We didn't do that. And what got me to change is I got married and started thinking about having kids. And we were doing a job here in Worcester, Nick and myself, at Clark University, photographing one of the buildings. And during the downtime, which is the middle of the day, because the sun is in the wrong spot, we came over to see our friend John Wozniak, who at the time had a dye transfer lab right here in this space where he produced his own work and worked for like Elliott Porter. And I was surprised when we got here, John had merged with a company from California called Evercolor Fine Art. And they were producing digital prints on this process called pigment transfer printing, which I can show you some samples later. And they also did contact printing on photographic paper. And I needed to make a change, and I had spoke to the guy that ran the place. I said, listen, I can't travel anymore. Can you get a job? And it kind of started there. But the thing I did skip over with Nick was in the wintertime when it was slow for architecture stuff, we taught ourselves digital imaging. We started working on this before there was even Photoshop. It was called Micrographics Picture Publisher. Worked on tiny files. So I was self-taught, Nick was self-taught on digital imaging.
I guess everybody in those days was self-taught.
Yeah, absolutely. There was no books, there's no workshops. It was kind of the beginning of digital imaging. And the files.
So then you came to work for John?
Well, I came to work here for John. I became director of digital imaging. I went from a two-person company, Nick and myself, to there was 15 to 30 at one time. We occupied 2/3 of this building, producing really high-end and expensive prints. The first print cost you $1,000, but they would last 300 to 500 years in direct sunlight. And this is where I started working for clients like Ansel Adams Trust, Edward Weston Trust, Francesco Scavullo, Irving Penn. We did stuff for NASA, even some stuff for Playboy, because they all wanted to try this process. We had clients from all over the world, and I continued to work for those clients. They kind of stuck. Some of those clients stuck with us. Mm-hmm. So then, for 6 years, Evercolor existed, but they didn't make money because they were a little top heavy. They went out of business, and I took over the pieces. And it went from 30 employees to just
Meaning their archive? Is that what you're referring to?
I took over some of the machinery. I took over all the digital files. I haven't gone back to the day Evercolor started. We don't really go back to those much anymore.
He has a file system with digital files that you must have thousands of.
77,000 digital files.
77,000 digital files. Yep. It's so it's just awesome what you and the way you organize the archives and everything. It's terrific.
Yep. Evercolor went out of business, and they offered me the pieces that were left, and so I went from 30 employees down to 3 of us. And the nice thing about what we've done since that day is everybody that works for me has been a photographer. So most of us has hand processed film, we've hand printed film, we've studied the history of photography. Most of the major labs out there
You're really artists too. Now, he is a fine photographic artist as well. Let's show a couple. I want to show the audience a few of your prints because he has a whole series of pieces which he did on things he finds in the streets, you know, run over by trucks and so forth. But I'll just show a couple of these. And what is this one?
This is a pie plate that I took in the parking lot of DeMulla's up in Ringe, New Hampshire.
And he's got ones of snow melting. Now this one kills me. Okay, I'm sure we're going to have to watch the glare on this, but what is this?
This is a straight print that I made. It's a Sunday circular that's under ice.
When he says a straight print, he means he hasn't digitally manipulated anything.
Yeah.
It's just a plain photograph taken from an actual.
It looks like I manipulated it. It ran
It
filters
does.
in Photoshop, but
It looks like a painting.
It's the way I found it. So
Yeah, and what is it exactly?
it's an ad that came out of a Sunday circular.
Under ice.
Under ice, yeah.
Under ice on the road?
Yeah.
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 Unbelievable. And then he's doing some things too, which are, when we talked about digital manipulation, these I would call photographs, but these are digital art, which means what to you when I say that?
Well, I came up with this idea because some customers were doing similar items, but because I have 3 children and I have this business, I can't go out and create images like I used to, so I started taking existing files and altering them.
So you play around on the computer and create a new image completely, which is really a whole new art form.
It's a picture of a grass patch over on Shrewsbury Street outside of DeLovo's that I photographed after lunch one day. And then you can see the green in the pavement, and then this is the negative version of that.
So it's kind of conceptual in that you're playing with the positive, negative also.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So, so you've been a photographer, and that's the beauty of it too, because the people that work here really know. That's why what makes you different.
Yeah.
You know, you're very different from other processing labs. In what way?
Well, like I said, the people that work for me, Mark Waters actually worked for John Wozniak. So he did the framing and the mounting, he did dye transfer printing. So he went to school for it, he's a photographer. Daniel Ampagumian went to school to be a photographer, he's a fabulous artist too. So we all know the history of photography. Other labs hire a young kid that knows how to run a Macintosh and knows nothing about photography.
Yeah.
And it really shows in the final print.
Yeah, and the point is that this lab works with the client to really get the most out of the print, and you know what processes and what so forth, what papers, everything.
Yeah.
And you work closely with the client in a very cooperative, collaborative manner.
Yeah.
Who are some of the other artists that you said you have archives of Ansel Adams and
Ed Weston, Pete Turner's a big name. And when you say with the client, Pete was an Evercolor customer, but what he really liked.
Pete Townsend?
Pete Turner.
Turner.
This is his book here, right?
Yeah.
What he really liked was, he's a New York guy, but he liked it. When you go to New York labs, you had to talk to the guy at the front desk and the salesperson. Never got to the technician where he got to talk to me directly, which a lot of people like.
To work with the technician.
Work back and forth.
Exactly.
Yep.
Because it's a collaboration.
It really is, yeah.
So you've done a number of books. I notice all these books that wow, they're fabulous.
Yep.
You have Rosenstock's books. He's one of the local people that works with you.
Ron Rosenstock, Alan Fletcher, Norm Ringdahl. There's several others, but most of the customers are national or international. Well, I have a job in here right now from Iceland. We have people who live in Italy and France. A lot of Boston photographers, Henry Hornstein and Alex McClainer.
And with the transfer of files virtually, digitally, you can deal with people all over the world.
Yeah, I'll work on an image and email them a JPEG, and they make comments on it, and we actually talk about it on the phone. So we do that all the time.
I wanted to show the audience this book, The Born to Run by Eric Miola. Now this I thought was kind of interesting. It's the Bruce Springsteen. Was this a re-edition of?
These are the unseen photographs from the Born to Run album.
Ah.
Eric documented pretty much Bruce's life from early on. He was kind of just following him around everywhere.
Let's just show a page or two.
Yeah.
So the beauty of this, or the interesting part about this for me was, though, that when you think that Mark is doing all this digital work, these came to you as black and white negatives,
Black
right?
and white negatives, yep.
And then what?
Well, the kind of interesting story is Eric, we had worked for him for quite a while, and he said, I got this project and I have hundreds of strips of negatives I need scanned, and I said, I really don't want to do it because the drum scanner is not set up to do strips. It takes a long time. He said, well, how about if I get a high-end flatbed scanner? And I said, oh, if you can do that. He called me back in a half hour, and he got Kodak to send their top of the line, which is a $50,000 flatbed scanner, which we kept here for 6 months to do this project.
Holy cow.
Yeah, we could fluid mount, which means you'd put the original strip into like a mineral oil type of thing and get a really high resolution scan.
Wow. Now, do you do any more printing of film here?
Yeah. Well, when you ask that, it's no longer do we take a piece of film and put it in an enlarger, we scan it first. We do a lot of that.
So it's all transferred into a digital file now?
Yeah, digitized on a scanner.
Before you would print it. It's not like you're doing the old baths in the darkroom.
Right. Well, you know, what happens is once we get the digital file, whether it's from a camera or a film, we then send it to our printer, which is called a Chromera. It takes.
When you say send it to your printer, you mean
electronically
in your room?
Yeah, it's an
You don't mean send it out.
Yeah, no, electronic transfer over to this printer.
This is where the buck stops.
Yeah, it takes a 50-inch roll of photographic paper, so that it's not inkjet printer. The dyes are light-sensitive dyes in the paper itself, just like they used to do at Photomat or the 1 Hour Photo Labs. The same paper. We expose it with a high-resolution LED.
Wow. What's the dimension on that machine?
That machine will take a 50-inch roll, and it'll print 160 feet if you wanted it to. It prints a lot like an inkjet printer where the paper advances by as it exposes.
See, that's the interesting thing. I thought that what they did was inkjet printing, but it isn't.
Well, we do inkjet, but the 90% of the stuff we do is all on photo paper. Most museums and galleries prefer the photo paper. It's been around longer. They know what it does. Where inkjet, people can combine inks and paper, tell them it's one thing, and the papers will fade quick.
Or they're not compatible as they should be.
Right.
It's very complicated, and I'm sure they're still working out the bugs on a lot of these things too.
Yeah, well, what we like is because the inks or the dyes, light-sensitive dyes, are in the paper itself. It has a different look than an inkjet print where the inks sit on the surface.
Yes.
And tell you the truth, these costs to the customer cost them a lot less than an inkjet print.
Really?
Yeah. So what we use our inkjet printer for is canvas and watercolor. If someone comes to me and wants a photorealistic paper on the inkjet paper, we pretty much don't do it. We talk them into doing the Chromera prints.
I see. So anybody can really come to you then, like an artist who has some work that they want reproduced for
absolutely
distribution.
We threw around some big names earlier, but the majority of the clients are doctors and lawyers. We have a large group of photo students, Rhode Island School of Design, UMass Dartmouth, a couple schools out in New York City, where the students actually use us to learn how to work with digital labs.
I see.
So it's anybody. We have a couple school teachers from. I didn't mention a name earlier, but they teach over here at the school down the street. They're elementary teachers that use us for pictures. So it can be anybody.
Yeah. The technology is just so advanced. It boggles my mind. And the fact that you can print to this scale just blows my mind. Maybe we should show our audience some of the other images. Well, I'm drooling over looking at some of these images. The technical processes today are so phenomenal. Mm-hmm. The color they can achieve is just amazing. And the scale of things, I'm realizing that a lot of things, it's really the technical skill as well, and the scale that makes the thing as it's almost like it's part of the art process.
Right.
So, for example, let's show the audience this print here.
We start out small,
And whose print is this?
This is Ormond Geely. These is called Girls in the Windows. It was taken in 1960. These are the top models of their day, all in one place at one time. I don't think you get the top models together today. They'd probably kill each other. And with the exception of two, one is the contractor's wife and one's the photographer's wife. I won't tell you which two. You can find out online.
But anyway, you were given this negative, is that it?
This was the original 2¼ transparency. Did this well over 12 years ago. We had to enhance the color because they were fading. The old Ektachrome transparencies faded away. They almost look like color negatives. So we enhanced the color, brought it back to where it was, straightened out some of the lines, and also sharpened some of the edges that were falling off.
So in other words, when the photographer takes the picture, as most of you probably know, the window always looks a little bit skewed because of perspective. So they're able to make the geometry of this perfect by...
In Photoshop, basically, yeah.
It's digital. That's why he's the collaborator, and I think you're the collaborator as artists in this studio.
Yep.
With working with the client.
It's a lot of back and forth.
But I want to show you the scale of this, which is so incredible.
So you get,
now here's going up and going up again.
Yeah, the interesting thing about this one here, which is 48 inches square, he's been selling this for $40,000 to $60,000 at Sotheby's twice a year for 15 years now.
Unbelievable.
Kodak rates this as one of the top 100 most recognizable photographs of all time.
And it's your work.
Well, I'm just making the photography gave me something beautiful
there
to
you
work
go.
with.
Now who is this?
This is John Wozniak, local artist who shoots in 4x5. This is a 4x5 original transparency that's been drum scanned and color worked in Photoshop. Many versions were done before we got to this. This is a 40 by 50 inch print. We can go 50 by 70 with this image here, and it holds up fantastic. And I know John now sells little details of this image where he crops out of the scan and makes a 40 by 50 of that. So
the color is so luscious. It's amazing.
Well, look at this green one right here.
Yeah.
I mean, that color is beautiful. Put this back.
Now is this color enhanced?
This is interesting. Maybe you want me to go through beginning to end.
Tell us how you do it.
Because this guy's a good example. This is Terry Walker, super talented guy out of Marblehead area, North Shore. What he does is he sends in an original transparency. He's starting to shoot digital now, but we've been working with him for years. This was a slide. So the slide was mailed to us. Actually, he drove it down. We talked about the color he wants, the dodging and burning. We'll then bring it into a scanner. We have a drum scanner that can scan film up to 8,000 dots per inch, or pixels per inch.
Wow.
Which for 35 millimeter, we only scan at 5,200 pixels per inch. That's a 100 megabyte file. From that file, we can then make a 40 by 50 print.
And that's why you can blow it up to such a monster?
Yeah, anything above 5,200, you're just capturing the film grain, so we don't go any bigger than that. I've used those files to make billboards. A billboard in London, a really big one. Ron Rosenstock's got a billboard coming up here in Worcester next month. I believe that one's from a digital camera, it wasn't a scan. So back to Terry though, Terry sends in the file, we drum scan it, and then I'll make a proof, and he comes back down. Let me pull one out of the drawer here.
Okay.
This is just a work print. Terry will come down and we will circle and talk about dodging and burning and enhancing. Like he wanted to add some sharpening here.
Which is what in the old days the photographer would do in the darkroom.
Exactly, yeah. We tape this to the wall and we shine some lights on it. We just stand there talking about dodge, burn, light and darken. We don't really add pieces of stuff. Like we don't add the shell. We're kind of a traditional lab. Everything we do here, you could have possibly done in a larger.
In the darkroom.
Yeah.
So in other words, once the artist begins to do more manipulation on the computer with Photoshop, like throwing in a little, kid's head here or something, or putting a foot coming out of here, then that becomes digital art. And not so much what I would call straight photography.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I do know that one thing we take a lot out is phone lines, I guess. So we do some removal of that.
So you remove things or...
Yeah, telephone poles and lines and usually the rubbish that ends up in the picture. Other than that, it's pretty much traditional
But that
prints.
would be through the artist's direction, of course.
Of course. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yep. But people do come to me because they like my style of printing. There is a subtle style that I do where Like working with Ron. Ron's taught me a lot. A lot of my customers teach me a lot of stuff, but sitting down with Ron, going one-on-one, he's taught me a lot about darkening the edges, you know.
So you're really working with the artist quite intensively.
Right. So this is another Terry Walker image. So I've already scanned this. I brought it into Photoshop, did digital work on it, and Terry has come back down and we've circled items that he wants to darken and lighten. Again, no adding, we don't add the acorns or take things out. It's pretty much darken and light. He wants to darken this a little bit.
Because it jumps out a bit.
Yeah, he's really taught me a lot also about how to move the eye around an image by darkening and lighting, you know.
By where you get the highest contrasts and the dominant, that's where your eye will follow.
Yeah, I'm still learning to this day. I've been doing this for 20, 30 years
Interesting.
now.
Really wonderful.
So once Terry gets something that he likes, I'll send it electronically over to, this process is the photo paper. So it's Fuji Crystal Archive, light sensitive, so it has to be exposed in the dark. So I'll send it electronically into the room with the Chromera. The Chromera is a digital enlarger. So it has a light source. The light source
That's the big machine?
The big machine, yeah. It takes a 50-inch roll. And the light source is an LED, a high-resolution LED. So there's a roll of unexposed paper. It feeds the paper over this big rubber wheel. It holds it down, and the LED exposes it. In the old days, it was just an enlarger with a bulb doing the same thing.
So it's not inkjet. This is LED light exposing the image onto a big circular cylindrical roller where the paper is running over, and the LED is really
exposing the paper line by line.
Paper. And the color pigment is in the paper.
The dyes, color dyes are in the paper, right?
And what is this process called again?
Well, the machine's called the Chromera. They used to be called the LightJet, was the predecessor to that, which used laser beams to expose the paper. And we call it Luminage. It's a name that John Wozniak had come up with back. So we only print on Fuji right now. We may add Kodak, but it's Fuji Crystal Archive, matte or gloss.
How long do these papers last, the matte and gloss? I know you have all different thousands of combinations, but what is the technology level at this point? How long?
Well, these are always been 70 years on display before it shows any noticeable fading.
So that means
Fuji
out
papers.
in light.
Well, it means one tungsten bulb, yes, on display.
Yeah.
So we did have a product we touched upon earlier, which was Evercolor pigment prints. I can show you real briefly because this is really interesting. These are made from light,
it's
just like this, yeah. What we did here is, again, we scanned it just like this, but then we made film separations. And for people who don't know what that is, it was just a CMYK negative.
When he says CMYK, what he's talking about is cyan, magenta, yellow, and black.
Yep.
And this is the way they did it in the old days,
we actually contact print these negatives onto this paper. And that lasted 300 to 500 years in direct sunlight. No longer available. The product has gone away. It cost $75,000 per color. And there's 4 colors here when we bought them back then. So it's kind of died out. It's been replaced by inkjet printing, the Chromera printing. You know, we do some inkjet printing here, and that's mainly canvas and watercolor prints that you couldn't get off of the Chromera. You know, Fuji doesn't make a light-sensitive canvas, and people do want that. So
because you need that special paper, the photosensitive paper for the Chromera.
Matter of fact, we don't even advertise we have the inkjet printer here. We're developing a new website. It should be out in a month or two, and then people will know we've been doing it for 8 years now, inkjet printing, but nobody knows we have it because we prefer to do the Chromera prints on the Fuji paper. And then once that's done and Terry signed off on it, we're going to mount it for him. We have a full mounting facility.
Tell us about the mounting. That's so interesting too. The way art is being shown these days, you know, fine art, high-end, archival, digital images. The way most of them are being shown these days is on these mounted aluminum blocks. You know, tell us about this.
Well, we have a cold mount press, so basically pressure-sensitive adhesive. So you'll feed the original piece of paper through, whether it's inkjet or Chromera photo paper. Through there, it'll transfer an adhesive to the back of the print or the substrate. We offer...
Meaning what you're mounting it
on?
Yeah,
like you mentioned, aluminum. We mount on sheets of aluminum for people. We mount on gator foam, the traditional art board. anything that we can fit through our press, which is 52 inches wide.
Now, do large images like that, is it really essential that they be, it's cold mounting, you say?
Yeah.
Because they would be too damaged and vulnerable, right?
Right. Well, for our clients that aren't on the Northeast, the big prints, we send them rolled prints, and they have them mounted locally. But it's pretty essential to get the
Because
big,
you don't have to ship them then.
Yeah, it's pretty essential to have them mounted because you will kink them or damage them moving them around.
Well, just imagine those Andreas Gursky prints that are 10 feet wide. You know, part of the art is that it's a new presentation, a new way of envisioning photographs mounted on this aluminum. It's very, very different.
Right.
But it's also permanent. You know, it's strong and
Very
durable
strong.
and no bending, no pressure of light on the surface of the film or whatever.
Yeah, well, the major museums and galleries that are collecting our customers' work, they're requesting that they go onto aluminum right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they'll be mounted onto aluminum, so there's 3 inches of aluminum showing on either side. So that helps with damage.
And they can handle it then.
Exactly.
They can put their hands on the side of the aluminum and pick up these huge prints without touching the photograph.
Yeah.
What seals the photograph and protects it from the air?
Nothing.
Nothing?
We don't. Well, the inkjet prints will coat with some of the coats out there, but the Fuji prints, it's a straight print. So you're either putting glass over it. A lot of people aren't even putting glass over it now.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah, so they'll just request another print because you can match them year to year.
That's right.
So,
well, that's the beauty of it. Once these files are in his archives back there, you could come back 20 years from now and have, if the equipment is still around, have him print up a new one.
Yep.
So I'm afraid that's about all we have time for, but I feel like I've learned a lot because I'm a moron when it comes to all this technology. But thanks so much for sharing some of the stuff you do here. And so
well,
Mark,
thanks for coming
Mark
in. It's been
Doyle,
great. Yep.
thanks for having us. And tell us your website before you go.
It's www.autumncolor.com.
One word, autumncolor.com.
Yeah, one word, autumncolor, yeah.
Okay, thanks again for joining us, and we hope to see you next time for another edition of Arts and Ideas.